best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm here with Joe, and we have the great pleasure to be with Dan Panosian tonight. Dan, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I just helped Dave Johnson move into his brand new art studio downtown in LA.
Nice.
So,
very nice. Yeah. All right, so I can't help but notice that you've got your studio. This is your normal studio that you're in right now?
Yeah, I got a little, you can't see it too well there, but I got a library in the back and my little kid's desk right over here for my son, who likes to come in and draw with me.
Nice. Are you, as a parent of two, I've got one of my daughters is very interested in comic art, the other is not. Is your son following in your footsteps, learning art and loving it? Or?
He's not bad at art. I don't think he's going to pursue anything like that. He's 8 years old and he likes comics, but he's not, I think he likes animation more than comics.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it is fun. Like he'll come in here and draw with me and he'll look at my artwork. He can kind of recognize it. I do some stuff for the Natural History Museum. I draw these dinosaurs. They have it's almost like a dinosaur convention for kids and adults. Yeah. Everybody loves dinosaurs. But I do the illustrations every year. So they'll put them on T-shirts, make it really huge. And he's seen like TV commercials with my dinosaurs since he was like a little kid. And he goes, he recognized, I think even at like 4 or 5, oh, Daddy, you drew that. It's kind of cool. That's the best compliment I've ever received.
Yeah, no, I'm and now I got to think you and Brett Booth have to team up at some point. He draws dinosaurs as well.
Yeah, Walt Simonson's a big dinosaur guy.
Yeah, that's his signature as a dinosaur.
Yeah, William Stout.
All right, well, that's a team up that needs to have. But the reason why we're talking about a number of things with you tonight, and like I said, very very thankful you came on chatting with us today. But you have a new crowdfunded book coming out with Zoop. Tell us about that. Yeah,
it's technically like a volume 3. This will be my 3rd art book, and this one's going to be hardcover. And Zoop is putting it together. They're a pretty cool company. They did that John Paulione tribute book for Winterman, and that's when I first kind of became familiar with them. So. Great guys to work with, and I'm excited to see how the book's going to turn out. I've never really, done my own crowdfunding of any kind like that. I've done like portions for other people where they'll ask you to do a cover here and there or contribute, but I've never done one, so it'll be a brand new thing.
Is Zoop a good way to step into it? If you're a creator, you haven't done it before. Is that the right way?
The reason I picked Zoop over Kickstarter and Indiegogo is they do the fulfillment also. Mm-hmm. So that's every person I've talked to who's done crowdfunding anything, it's like the hardest part for them is fulfillment, like shipping everybody their product and, figuring out packaging. And it's, apparently it's a big hassle. So luckily Jordan and Eric seem to enjoy that aspect.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm glad.
I don't know if they enjoy it, but they're going to do it. So I'm excited. I'm really excited.
But that's great. So it gives you the opportunity. You just get to focus on the book and putting your best
together.
Best out there.
Like the last book I did, a lot of art books you see at conventions. They're really it's all artwork, which is why you buy them in the first place. Mm-hmm. But my second one, I kind of wanted to do a little spoof on real art books that you see. Like there's always nobody reads them. You're there to look at the pictures, but there's always a lot of prose and discussion about whatever's on the page. So I populated the last one with just garbage and parody. Like even my foreword is just made up, and so I kind of have fun with it and rambling on about aspects of the illustration or whatever that really nobody could care less about. I don't know if that's a selling point. I doubt it, but.
Text is garbage. Come buy it.
Yeah. Buy this book. Don't read it. Whatever you do.
So a lot of these campaigns, they'll offer like the book, but there might be a couple of other perks. Are there any other things that people might be able to, pick up, or different editions or signed editions?
Well, yeah, definitely. There's going to be signed editions. We're also you're going to be there's like a variants package. So I'm going to sign and remark. I'll be remarking the books too. There's that where I do like a little drawing, but We're also going to be having variants, like all these variant covers that come out, and some of them, I don't even know half the time what some of these are worth, but variant covers apparently a big part of the comic book marketplace, and I have tons of them, so it'll be part of the package.
Nice. And so, have you ever thought about like including with your books a perk, like you redraw some terrible comic, like you could? We recently interviewed Mark Miller. Would you read, like you could redraw Trouble? Story of would that be a no?
I think I'd redraw Prophet is what I'd do.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Or you could end your career and redraw the Unfunnies.
The what?
The Unfunnies. I don't know if you remember. That was an early Mark, Miller World book. But,
oh no, I'm not familiar.
We're just teasing him. He was great. He spent an hour and a half with us the other night, and we love Mark.
We interviewed him once on the Drink and Draw. Thing. He's hilarious, funny guy.
He is.
Yeah.
Tell me about Drink and Draw. So much of crowdfunding is often tied to live streams and other. This is not the case in this instance, but you've been doing Drink and Draw for a while now. How'd you get involved in that? Well,
Dave Johnson, myself, and Jeff Johnson all started Drink and Draw in 2005. It's just a way for us to hang out, and it just grew and grew, and now there's Drink and Draw chapters all over the world. But it started in Los Angeles with the three of us, and anytime we put the word out, and other artists just kept coming. It's a great way to be social. It's kind of a lonely, solitary job we do, and it's nice to get out and meet people. It's also, it's a good conversation opener. Also. We hang out at these bars. We usually go to the same one. We're going to be starting it up again at the Rainbow Room in Los Angeles, which is like this awesome heavy metal bar that,
yes,
people go to.
A lot of good history there.
Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, we couldn't go to these bars anymore. So we just decided it was time to do a YouTube channel. So it's been fun. We're taking a little break over the summer, but I'm going to resume it probably to discuss this art book, and just also because I miss hanging out with everybody.
You, the entire kind of, there's been, let's see, I want to ask this question in a way that doesn't go super weird. The comic industry has been wrestling with, BarCon and some of these other things, but it strikes me, the Drink and Draw, you still have to be sober and sane enough to draw. So like a natural buffer, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want the drawing to come out good, I guess, yeah. But that's not the point of it. The point of it's really to, just be hanging out with other creatives, and also you're not bringing work to Drink and Draw. You're typically just drawing whatever you want. And so, usually as a comic book artist, you just don't get to, unless you're Ryan Otley, you're not drawing for fun all day. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Ryan stuff, but he always manages to, do crazy, wild sketches and still churn out books.
Yeah, I don't know how he manages his schedule. I've always been kind of confused about that.
He's a phenom.
Yeah.
Chris Samney is the same way. Chris is always doing fun sketches, and and really the only time I get to just draw for the pleasure of drawing is when I'm doing Drink and Draw stuff.
Yeah. And so when you're doing it, as you mentioned, just via a channel and through video, something like what we're doing here, but it's still, you still are socializing to some extent, but the experience is profoundly different, right?
Yeah, it's not a Drink and Draw by any means. It's a show, and I try to draw, and I'm manning the channel and popping things on and moving the camera so you can focus on somebody's work. So it's a exhausting hour, but it's a lot of fun.
You're going to have some relief getting back to being in person, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I just don't want we've already kind of let the Drink and Draw YouTube channel slide a little bit. I just don't want it to slide all the way. You have to maintain some kind of schedule online there.
Well, you can still broadcast from the venue, right? I mean,
yeah, that gets a little tough. It depends on your internet connection, but it's possible. Yeah, we could do that. It'd be a little loud and chaotic.
Sure.
But so some people, don't necessarily have to wait until this campaign to pick up, current work from you. You have a book. What is it? Alice Ever After, that's coming out right now from Boom. So
yeah, we're on our 4th issue. Comes out the Wednesday of Comic-Con, and also Yeah, it's a 5-issue series, and I did the writing and the flashback artwork for when it's not flashbacks. I'm sorry, it's just when Alice visits Wonderland. I do that portion of the artwork, and all of it's colored by this fantastic colorist from Italy, Fabiana Mascalo, and the artist, the pencil and ink artist, is Giorgio Spallata, also an Italian artist. And he's fantastic. And then I got Canary coming out through Comixology. It debuts Tuesday, the Tuesday before Comic-Con. So I'll be at San Diego doing this, signings for Comixology and discussing that book with Scott. He's got a whole bunch of them. Scott's, he's another one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, so what's Canary? What's Canary about for people who don't necessarily?
Canary is a horror western,
Nice.
and it's about 7 issues, and it's all digital. But then eventually, Dark Horse Comics is going to collect them all and make it into a trade paperback. I'll also be doing a artist edition of that book through Zoop, most likely, and in that way. I don't know. I like the black and white. I'm coloring Canary as well as drawing it, but I like seeing black and white artwork. I'm kind of a fan of that. I've always been a fan of like the black and white comic book magazines that used to come out, like Savage Sword of Conan, all those creepy and eerie magazines from Warren, Heavy Metal. Would run some black and white stuff here and there.
Very nice. I mean, I think a lot of people's work in yours is one of them look really good in black and white. And so I always would prefer to at least see an edition put out that way. How, as Comixology has definitely had some struggles lately. Have you hit any of that? Has any of that impacted you?
Well, I don't know. It's funny, Snyder will post something on Twitter, and maybe 1/3 of the comments are people going, "Fix that app." They get all flustered.
Well, it's his fault. He wrote the app, of course.
Yeah. So I think Scott's working on it. When he's not writing comics, he's sitting there coding the app.
Along with Ryan Otley, yeah.
Yeah, those guys are doing all the. Or maybe it was Scott's idea just to ruin it.
I'm just curious, but does any of it? I hear you see online, you see a lot of creators going, "Oh, this is the worst thing in the world" and everything else. But I haven't talked to a creator yet where they noticed there was a problem. I've talked to plenty of customers who are like, "Hey, the interface is bad. I can't subscribe." There's issues there.
Yeah.
But for a creator, I haven't heard anybody who had any issues yet.
Well, I for one haven't seen it on Comixology. I'll see it like everybody else sees it, and it'll be interesting doing scrolling and reading it that way, because I've never. That's actually not true. I did the very first digital comics that came out a long time ago at Byron Price. I don't know if you remember that publisher.
Yeah.
Byron Price when Stan Lee kind of left Marvel and did his own thing. He had a line of comics with Byron Price, and it was interesting. It was an early Stan Lee universe. Eventually he landed up in a lot of them, but that was the first digital one. But nobody was really doing digital comics. Not a whole lot of people were online. So
it continues to be a struggle of trying to figure out our way here in the U.S. at least with digital.
Yeah.
So actually backing up, so I was. It was funny. Whenever I'm going to talk to somebody, I look and I'm like, well, what did other people say when they interviewed, Dan? Because I don't want to ask the same questions over and over. I ran across, you have a remarkable streak of people asking you questions like, do you draw comics in newspapers? Are you that? I get multiple, like, did you actually have a comic in The Big Bang Theory? Was one of my favorite, like, very intense questions. But I did get out of there. So you started very young in comics.
Yeah. I was in high school drawing comics for smaller indie companies. So it gave me I wasn't paid very much, but it gave me a good work ethic, and I'm very fast at what I do. There's not a lot. I don't do a lot of second guessing, I guess, particularly with the inking, and I think that's based on primarily I was such a tight inker. I loved Terry Austin, and I loved Scott Williams when Scott Williams was doing X-Men. I just couldn't get enough of it, so my style changed to kind of suit that. And now I draw and ink a lot looser, and so it's super fast and fun, and I'm not overly concerned about how the lines look necessarily, as long as they show the structure and the form of what I'm drawing. And I think those years and years starting so young kind of really helped me develop that style.
Nice.
Is it true? It was 14 years old is kind of when you.
Oh yeah. No, I was into Dungeons and Dragons, and I started a company called Anvil Enterprises. And what I did was I put an ad in the back of Dragon Magazine, which was the TSR, or Dungeons and Dragons official magazine. And in the back, they kind of had these illustrated classified ads. They weren't, like a classified ad you'd find in a newspaper or Craigslist or anything, but they were cheaper advertising that you could do in the back. And it was basically, it was like, send me a self-addressed stamped envelope, and I'll send you a character sheet. And on there, you can describe your character, and I'll draw it. And it took off. And again, that forced me, like every day I'd come home from school and I'd be drawing, elves, crazy stuff. But I love Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. I still do.
Nice.
So it was fun, yeah. And that do more comic book work.
What characters did you like to play in Dungeons and Dragons?
Usually a thief, or it's usually a thief masquerading as like another character class. So it's a thief masquerading as a paladin or something, like just kind of gain the confidence of everybody else. And then I'm usually just robbing everyone. I could care less about the actual mission agenda. It's more about.
Feels like there's so many analogies here for people.
And what's the longest campaign you participated in?
Oh, there was one that went on for probably about 3-4 months.
Very
but
nice.
That's because there's a lot of chit chat.
Yeah.
Now are you still doing any of that today? Do you still?
I haven't in a while. I was doing it over the pandemic because it was a great way for everybody to get together, and it was fun. I was doing it with Ross Ritchie, who's the publisher of Boom, and a few other guys. There's a showrunner, this guy Dario, who's doing Jack Ryan. So we all get together, and there's a lot of his friends were big D&D guys.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I back up again though. So you start at 14. You're doing this, and you're getting work going, and you basically the story goes, and is this true? You basically got 2 jobs at once. You're doing, and you get a position with Neil Adams at his ad agency, and then you also start doing work for Marvel. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'd go in the mornings to Neil's studio. He would have given me work the day before to ink. I'd bring in the new pages, and he'd show me the pages I did the day before, and he'd have completely redrawn them.
Oh.
And but it was like every morning it was like an hour art lesson from Neil. It was probably the most instruction I've ever. I didn't go to art school, so it was really, really eye-opening and great. And then I would do backups at Marvel. I was working on Thor, Captain America, and some Doctor Strange. And then at DC, I was inking Spelljammer at DC Comics and some other little things, and Mosaic with Cully Hamner.
So you're not old enough to drink yet, but you're getting.
Oh no! I mean, I wasn't 14 when I was doing that by any means.
Oh, okay. Yeah. How old were you when you started doing this?
Oh, when I first started working for Marvel, I was 21.
Okay.
Companies like Blackthorn and Eternity Comics in Malibu, I was like a junior in high school.
Okay. Yeah.
But what was?
Sorry, go ahead.
Just wanted to, since there's they're inducting Mark Grunwald into the Hall of Fame this weekend, and you were working on scripts that he wrote for Captain America at that time. Those backups.
I worked with him, and we developed some characters together as well, called the Chrononauts.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Do you have any Mark stories or anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, he was exceptionally kind and generous guy. He was great. He organized a lot of the sporting events at Marvel. I grew up reading Marvel comics and looking at like the bullpen bulletins and all. You kind of have this sense of what Marvel is based on just just that soapbox, Stan Lee soapbox, and the Marvel bullpen bulletins. And Marvel Age was a magazine that, I wish they had now, because it was really just like, here's what's going on at Very Marvel. And I was kind of lucky enough that I got in at the tail end of that sort of camaraderie that existed at Marvel at the time in the early 90s, like 91. And it was fun. Like, there'd be softball games, there'd be 5K runs, and he'd have, the after party. I mean, not an after party, but like everybody would come over to Mark's apartment afterwards, and just a sweetheart of a guy. And I remember he was, I mostly was inking when I first started, but he knew I wanted to pencil, and the guy could work with anyone he wants to, but he asked me if I could help design these characters with him. It never really went anywhere. I think I ended up going to Image Comics right around then and drawing Prophet, but I just thought, it was just very kind of him and gracious. He's just a really nice guy.
I've never heard a negative story about Mark.
Yeah, he's very kind.
He's the only one. I've never heard a single negative story.
Are there bad Archie Goodwin stories out there?
Oh, there you go.
There's hilarious Archie Goodwin stories, but I wouldn't say there's bad ones.
Yeah.
Walt Simonson's another one where, I don't think there's a bad Walt Simonson story out there.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Is that kind of camaraderie? Do you think so people are nostalgic right now? There's a lot of kind of missing the 80s and missing the 90s in comics, but I mean, the business is entirely different at this point. Yeah. Like what you're describing, I can't even imagine existing today. I mean, a Marvel owned by Disney, I don't think that entire environment would even function. I mean, let alone with COVID. I mean, is it even possible to do that?
I don't know. There was a comic book company, CrossGen, that existed, right. But that was the end of the 90s, I think. It was, and that guy, there's a lot of problems with that company and how it was run, and but he tried to create this perfect synergy and camaraderie within a comic book company. He made everybody who worked for him move to basically a city outside of Tampa, Florida. So if you wanted to work at CrossGen, he paid well, but you had to move there and you had to work in-house. And it was a big facility. It was massive. But he was a little, there's a little, almost like he was trying too hard to control, like, the fun, in a sense. Like, that has to grow organically. And I think Marvel just had that feeling to it. That, DC was a nice environment too, but Marvel definitely encouraged more fraternizing between, like, the editors and the people who worked there, and they had an active bullpen that was in the center of it. So in the center, people were actually putting the comic books together, because you have to remember, it wasn't done with a lot of computers. It was all so it was interesting. You had John Romita's wife, Virginia, in the bullpen. And if you wanted, like, I use a lot of Zipatone, I'd go in and try to get Zipatone supplies. I could get them all for free at Marvel. But she'd always go, now, these are for Marvel jobs, aren't they? And I'm like, because I was working everywhere. Like I said, I was at Neil's and DC. I go, of course. I didn't want to get on her bad side. She's tough.
I'm struggling. I mean, the questions I get I do a lot of viewer questions and things in videos, trying to kind of wrestle with what's going on. But it is, I mean, it's just different. And when we talked to Mark a couple days ago, he's got a theory out. I know he's put it out in his Substack. Is the comic industry itself, like a lot of things, goes through these cycles, these 20-year kind of moments. I mean, his theory is that we're heading up to we're at the end of one. We're in a transition period right now to the next one.
What does he think?
And I wonder,
like,
what
do you think? What's the future hold in his opinion?
No, I think he looks at a lot of the crowdfunding things. I think he looks at the indie market. I think he looks at how corporate, Disney and AT&T, now Discovery, have taken the big two, and it's an opportunity. I think he sees for the new. But I think a lot of people are unsure. But I'm hopeful. the thing that keeps sticking in my mind is that there was, we hear these stories. We talked to Jim Salicrup. We talked to all these people kind of who shepherded comics in the 80s and 90s, and they have this, these same kind of wistful stories of the bullpen and the culture and the everything else. And there's definitely there was a shift away from that. So can there ever be a shift back?
I don't know. I mean, it was great. I used to work at Marvel, like I'd be in the bullpen trying to finish up pages, and it'd get later and later and later, and there'd be literally nobody in the office. No one. It's just me alone on the entire editorial floor and bullpen floor of Marvel, period. All the doors are open. You could go into any editor's office, go through the flat files, make Xeroxes of whatever work you saw. I'd check the Rolodexes and make prank phone calls from the Marvel offices. I was, I was a young kid. But, you'd never see that now. There'd never be a time where you get like a corporation run by Disney or any honestly. If I ran a company, I wouldn't want young Dan Panosian, running around the office at midnight, So
yeah, randomly call it.
It's definitely a different time, and the fact that, they just, for good or for bad, would trust any artist to, it wasn't exclusively me. I'm sure Mark Texiera was constantly in the office. They'd kind of force him to come to finish up the last Punisher pages or last Ghost Rider pages. So he was always in there. They're feeding him, they're bringing him, donuts and Diet Cokes or whatever. And a lot of the editors sometimes over the weekend, we were pushed in doing so much work, like the editors would say, okay, if you come by our apartment, we'll feed you and we'll erase the pages while you're working on them. And it was an interesting time for sure. Definitely glad I was living in New York at that time.
Well, yeah, that would be difficult. As we heard from other people who didn't, it'd be difficult.
Yeah.
So you decide to go to Image. You're working at Marvel. You decide to move to Image. Was it just that there was all this flood of attention, momentum there, or what made you decide to head there?
Well, I was one of the few guys. I think was the first guy at Marvel to kind of follow in Scott Williams and his footsteps, because the X-Men were taking off, and I'd noticed early on, okay, this is going to go somewhere. Prior to Jim and Wills ever being on any X titles, they were working on Punisher at the time. And I think he had done some Alpha Flight, but I was a big fan. So as they got more and more popular, Scott couldn't ink everything. So they had to find someone who could kind of emulate that style. And at the time, I was the only one. At DC Comics, you had Art Tiver, who was doing something similar to what Scott was doing, but there was no one at Marvel doing that. So they put me on a book that Wills was doing called Legion of the Night that Scott had started, and then I finished up. And the only reason they did that was because they would see me scouring those pages and studying them. They're like, well, give it to Dan. So very quickly, I went from just doing backups to working on X-Men titles. And then from there, Rob was like, I'm starting Image Comics. I want you to move to California, and you're going to be drawing Prophet. And I'm like, all right. It was the first comic book I ever drew. And at the same time, Mark Silvestri also wanted me to, Scott Williams was, too busy working on Jim and Wills's books at Wildstorm, so he needed an inker. So Mark asked me to ink Cyberforce. So those guys were very, very competitive with each other. I mean, they all started, but they were very competitive. And when Rob found out about that, he was like, how much are they paying you? I'll pay you more. And, obviously I'm going to go with the better paycheck. So I ended up moving to Extreme Studios, but even then I think I inked Greg Capullo's first work on Spawn. And I was also inking John Romita Jr. on X-Men while I was drawing Prophet.
Now I'll ask you this, and we'll just go for the positive side of this. So I'm curious. You're talking. You start inking a lot of artists, a lot of new people coming out the gate. Is there anybody that you saw that you're like, this person's going to take off? I know.
Oh,
right off the bat.
Yeah.
I can do the opposite version of this question. We won't do that either.
Yeah, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I got to ink some of Lionel Yu's first work, and I looked at it and I was like, this guy is amazing. Like, the amount of detail. It was so much work that I was glad that I was transitioning into doing my own stuff, because his work was even more detailed than it is now. I like his current style even more. But yeah, I thought he was kind of up and coming in that way. I knew Chris Picciello from when he was doing work at DC Comics, and I got to ink his first Marvel work, which was X-Men Unlimited #1, and then they put him on Generation X. So yeah, I was like, this guy's Chris Picciello is just amazing. He's one of the most creative artists working in the business.
Yeah, I would like to see him on a regular book again. I know he's had some health issues. So.
Yeah,
but hopefully soon. An inker, and a lot has been said about this too. That the companies are now having people pencil and ink their own work, and there's a definite quality difference, I think, that you hit. And it feels like if you ask somebody to do double the job in the same amount of time, I mean, it just and maybe the transition to digital. I mean, do you have a take on this of how?
Yeah, I think it's more from a financial perspective from an artist. Like, you get more money if you're doing the entire project yourself. And also, I'm a huge fan of interesting inkers and embellishers. Like, Frank Miller's Daredevil wouldn't be the same without Klaus Janson, and Klaus Janson added quite a bit to that as far as depth. And it was hard for people to tell when Frank was just doing 8.5 by 11 layouts, and Klaus would blow those up. It didn't look any different from what you saw when Frank was actually penciling the book. But I do think, because of the way the printing is now, you could essentially just use levels in Photoshop and boost up the pencils. You really technically don't need an inker, which is a shame. I agree with you. I think it lacks something sometimes, but
it really does. I think it's you think about some of the things that have changed. I mean, that's a big one to me, and it's one of those funny ones. So if running a shop in the early '90s, I remember there was a point of view and I forget that it was a Comics Buyer's Guide, comic research, that design that would come out. And one of the common questions were, why do we need inkers? Wouldn't it be better if the penciler could just do it all? Like, then you get the true artistic vision and everything else. And I think now we've lived that timeline, and it sucks. I mean, some people can pull it off. Sorry.
No, I agree, but it's also time consuming. Like, during that image time, which is the same era as like the era of that huge X-Men era, the quality of the artwork, I don't know about the quality, but the intensive detail that's put on a page, it just takes a lot longer. If you look at Silver Age or Golden Age comics versus comics from the 90s or today, it's a world of difference. And that's why you have an artist on a book and he does 6 issues a year as opposed to 12, the way people used to do it. I'd love to, if you love a book and you love an artistic team and the writing team, you really don't want to see, 4 of those issues not be by your favorite pencil or inker,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. People point to a Jim Lee or Todd McFarlane. Obviously, they would put a lot of detail into the page, and it's incredible. But Joe and I have done a lot of reviews of Silver Age books, of Kurt Swan books, and that stuff is packed. I mean, back in the 60s, the detail on those pages was incredible. It was
beautiful. And then I remember artists would talk about when Bernie Wrightson and Barry Smith came in on the scene. They're like, guys, stop putting so much work on these pages because you're making us all look bad and we have to work harder. And it's typical. Like, when you love what you do, and obviously someone like Bernie Wrightson and Barry Smith are just exceptionally passionate about what they do, of course they're going to put so much love into the page. But there's some people that are just, obviously they chose comics as a living, but they also, it's not their true, they're not putting everything into it every single day.
Yeah.
Do you think your career has been very consistent? I mean, a lot of people have come and gone, and they have their runs, but you've had a really nice, consistent career. But you've also consistently had a career outside of comics. My theory here is that I'm just curious your take, is that helped quite a bit. You were always grounded in something else. I don't know if ground is the right word, But how did that help? Do you think keep you?
I think it did. I think it helped a great deal. My dad was a commercial artist, and he was kind of like a John Hamm sort of Mad Men sort of guy. And so he loved comics. He kind of got me into it. He always wanted to be a comic book artist, and that was one way I had to try to connect with him. And so he passed away when I was 28, which is right around the time I stopped working for Marvel and DC. I didn't put this together until like years later, but I got into advertising. I did commercial artwork, and I did some video game stuff. I did whatever I could. I was working for DreamWorks. I was working for companies that did movie posters. I would design what the movie poster would look like. Mm-hmm. But it taught, like, I wasn't that great of an artist, in my early 20s. So I really didn't know. I learned how to draw based on looking at other artists, and those artists built a foundation of really knowing how to draw and learning and academically the way they should. So I ended up going to like a life drawing class, or they're not really classes. They're more just, they have a model, and they had this guy, Jeff Watts, who's this terrific artist in San Diego. And I would go there, and I learned very quickly I did not know what I was doing. And it was a very humbling experience, because here I am making a living. I own a house, and I'm like, wow, I really guess I'm not really an artist. I can't draw this person without it looking like a cartoon or a comic. Like I could get the pose that they're in, but I learned how to draw a nose that looked like a John Byrne nose or this, and not everybody has that same nose. So you have to learn to actually draw what you see. So it was very intimidating, but it taught me how to draw better, and it got me drawing quicker. I did a lot of storyboards, and sometimes you have to do up to 30 panels a day. And it gave me the confidence. I go, wow, if I can do 30 panels of these loose kind of pencils for storyboarding, if I only did 6 panels but tightened them up for a comic, that's a theory, by the way. It's super hard drawing a comic book page. It takes all day, but it gave me the confidence to go, well, maybe I could go back into comics. I really love comics, and I considered everything else for that probably 10-year period. Like I called it drawing refrigerators, because no one goes into, I want to be an artist to draw refrigerators. But I was just earning a paycheck and probably making more money doing that, than I ever have doing comic books. But Dave Johnson saw some artwork, and he was like, you should be drawing comics. I hated your work on Profit, but if you drew a comic that looked like this, I'd buy it. I didn't even know Dave that well. I'm like, wow, it's kind of an insult, but it's a compliment at the same time.
I'm not sure it's a backhanded compliment or.
Dave's created a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, but it also had to have given you some confidence, though. I mean, I've had a number of artist friends. We've had some people here. We did interview the team who was doing the Winterman back in there, and Sean Marks spun on, and one of the kind of consistent threads is that if you're all in on comics, there becomes, I don't want to say a desperation, but that's your gig, that's your business. And then you may have a friend who's in video game art, you hope to get in there, but there's kind of this panic. And I think at times companies can take advantage of that, either lowering a page rate or, being funny with how, we'll just draw all this stuff for me to get paid on the back end or whatever happens to be.
Oh yeah, it's a disaster.
But if you have and love to kind of get your take on that, but if you've got this other job, you always know you take care of yourself financially in comics because you do have this other world to step into if you need to. You don't have to do anything out of desperation. Is that true?
I mean, I did it. I just saw, I guess at the time, I didn't really have the skills to, I tried doing a Marvel comic after I did Profit, and it was a disaster. Like I realized I wanted to be a penciler, but I just didn't have the skills to do it on a monthly level that I would be satisfied with the results. And so, luckily living in Los Angeles, all the studios were out here. I lucked my way into a few nice positions. I was working at for DreamWorks. I was working for the Imagineers, the Disney Imagineers, and doing different projects in that capacity. They're always kind of loosely, tangentially connected with comics. They wanted a comic book style, or I got it because of the background in comics. But yeah, I was more out of a frustration I didn't quite even understand that kind of put me in that position. I also knew guys like Bill Sienkiewicz did work outside of the comic book industry and still does to this day. So I was like, there's a possibility to do that. It sounds kind of exciting. And I veered in that direction for a good chunk of time.
Yeah. How, what would be, well, I got kind of two questions. First off, you have some up and comers, some people you're talking to, or you meet an artist, you're doing your networking. What kind of advice do you give somebody who's stepping into and is saying, hey, I do have this small comic company. They're saying that I should take all the money, later, but it'll be better for me. Like, how do you steer people?
Well, I mean, when you're young, I'd go for a deal like that. I mean, I didn't get paid much to draw comics and ink comics when I was young. You do it to, that's the time to do it. I mean, you can't have a family and go, I'm going to go all in and make $25 a page or $50 a page. It's just, you'll never be able to do it. But I think when you're young, you need to. It's that publisher they don't have the money to pay you, and you might not necessarily have the skills yet to compete at some place like Marvel or DC. So it works, and that getting paid on the back end, you can't ever count on that ever. I mean, even to this day, I just did a graphic novel not too long ago, and the way it was explained to me, like the back end money on this thing was going to be huge, life-changing money. And I thought to myself, get a good page rate. Make sure you get a good page rate, because you will probably never see a dime on the back end. And sure enough, thank God I got a good page rate out of them. Because it's just very rare that these days that there's huge royalties. Yeah. There's maybe 5%, 10% of the people working in comics are in a royalty structure that they can count on.
Any massive red flags you tell people to watch out for?
I mean, ideally, you want to work for a company that's had some stuff published. I'd be nervous about, do they have a plan, or are they connected, like maybe with Diamond, or do they have a way to distribute these books? And that's the interesting thing about crowdfunding today is, you can do, like Jimmy Palmiotti puts out a lot of cool graphic novels that he's done, and even series. He did one with Dave Johnson, Popkill, and then I think they did 3 or 4 issues that way. But Jimmy always makes it a point to like either go to Image or IDW or one of these companies to get them distributed, so people beyond the crowdfunding sector can get a look at these stuff. And a lot of times, if you're doing a book, you want it in the hands of someone that might see potential in it and want to turn it into something outside of comics. I mean, that's the dream for everyone. Everyone wants to be, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You want that opportunity. Yeah. At least I do. I mean,
yeah. I know you have a bunch of stuff coming out. You have the Zoop campaign. You have Alice Ever After. You have Canary. But there are also going to be people listening to this who like back issue diving, who like going back, checking out some of the stuff from the 90s. Like, if people had either one book or one issue to look for that you worked on during the 90s, like, where would you point them to? It'd be like, I'm out of everything. Like, you should really buy my new stuff because I'm always getting better. But if that's the era you want, look at this.
I would say that issue I did with Chris Picciolo, I'm really still proud of to this day. That X-Men Unlimited #1. I think that was some of my best inking. Actually, I really, when I was inking Dale Keown on Pitt, I was really happy with that. We also did a Hulk versus Pitt for Marvel. I got to ink, and then the last 10 pages or so I did finishes on, which is probably noticeable. But it was that was some good work in the 90s. As far as penciling goes, I don't think there's really anything worth picking up
Oh,
It's-
jeez.
I mean, I'm just being honest. It's just not.
no, let's say,
Yeah.
sure.
No, I appreciate that. Any artists that you see? I mean, I have this. I don't think it's my theory. A lot of people say this, but they see other artists in their work. So you obviously worked under and with some legends through the years. Anybody you see in your work that their style that you see still coming out?
In my work,
Yeah.
as far as influence, what's interesting is like I said, I was very influenced by like John Byrne as a young guy, but I grew up reading a lot of Conan, so a lot of John Buscema comes out, and it's when I first started, if I liked an artist, like I'd have a Jim Lee page blown up like a Xerox, so I could look at it and study it, and I'd study, well, how does he draw this bicep? How does Scott Williams ink this thing? Or I was really into that. But as far as like my style, how I draw today, there's a lot of John Buscema and Mort Drucker, but I don't have that stuff out. I guess I just kind of assimilated it, from my childhood, and now it just comes out in the work, and it's kind of weird to see, but I dig it. I really, John Buscema, fantastic artist. I mean, he's a legend. He's
Absolutely.
He's there with Kirby as far as proliferation and how all the work he did and all the amazing titles he worked on, and particularly if you're a fan of Conan.
And kind of an inverse on that, are there any artists you've been seeing coming up, either that are a little more green, or they've just been starting to build their career, or maybe just an artist you think that's undervalued, that's worth
so many. I mean, I don't know. It'd be hard to say like.
Make some enemies right now by excluding some people, please.
Yeah.
no, but just like
no, I can't think of anybody offhand, but I mean, just being on Instagram and being on Twitter every day and seeing so much amazing artwork is, it can do a number on your confidence. It's like for me, like going to the comic book conventions, and I think most artists would agree with me. Like you go to these conventions and you're seeing everybody at their booth is displaying their best work. Yeah. So it can be a little intimidating and soul crushing sometimes. You're like, oh my God, what? I guess I got to work harder. But it also tends to inspire. So it's a little bit of both. Hopefully more inspiration than sadness. I'll see. San Diego's coming up for me, and it'll be interesting.
Speaking of Twitter, you seem to not. I mean, you have a nice balanced Twitter. Like nothing really dramatic or insane seems to happen around you. How do you?
I don't like to. There's a little while I was on Facebook and Twitter where I'm not big into politics. I'm not.
Sure.
But there's a time in our country's history where it's inescapable.
Yeah.
But I just got to a point where I'm like, anybody who's following me on any of these social platforms is not following me because they want my opinion on anything in the political spectrum or even anything besides comic book artwork. So, I have plenty of fans on, both sides of these political things, and I don't want to alienate anyone. I don't want to dislike someone because they voted a certain way. That's a personal decision people have, but. Yeah, so I try to steer clear of that. I just most of the stuff is just goofy nonsense in artwork. So I gotta, I think it's a better way to handle this stuff.
Oh, for sure. No, it seems some people are able to get, it's always, and it doesn't always match up. We've had people leave Twitter, I can't do it anymore. And they leave and they're.
Well, I mean, why do they feel that way? It's just like, they're obviously letting someone or some group of people get to them. You don't have to. You actually don't have to participate in that if you don't want to. You can just like someone like Rick Remender is a great example. Rick just got into. He was a little bit like me, and I think he was posting opinions here and there about stuff that's outside of comics, and then finally he was like, you know what? I'm just using this as a tool to reach my fans, and that's a smart way to go. I think. There's some people who I'm not going to name names, but I think they love that side of it the politics more than the comic books. It's for me, I'm like, I'd rather not hear about that.
There are people that
It's true.
have the opinion that once you get a certain platform, that you have an obligation to say certain things, and at least when it comes to comics, I have one of my brothers works in music, social media stuff, and if you have under 100,000 followers on any platform, they don't look at you because you don't have any real influence. That's the way they look at it. And if you have over 100,000, maybe $20 to do something, but there are people that it's they have 5,000, 10,000 followers, and they're just I owe it to the world to let them, and it's kind of bizarre.
Well, it's also funny, even just other artists critiquing other artists on it's just that's a good way to get people to hate you, if you want to do that. It's fun though. I mean, that's the type of stuff it's fun to watch other people do it. I don't want to participate. I got into it with a couple of years ago with critiquing the artwork, and there's no point to it. There's just, I have my opinion, that person has their opinion, and they're entitled to their opinion. And it should just be left at that, Yeah.
So you're saying you don't want to go to say Oliver Capil and take a bunch of that art and you draw squishy faces. I'm going to fix it for you. And just see how that works out.
I'd like to take his artwork and put it in my collection. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God, he's so good.
I love Oliver, by the way. He does not have squishy faces in his art.
No, he's
one of the best
Legion
artists. I loved his run on the Legion.
No, sure.
Oh,
I am surprised though, as an artist, the fixed it for you. There's no real way that goes well, right?
No, and it's always someone who can't draw as well as the person that's fixing it. It's always this wannabe artist that it's just like anyone. They want attention. It's a way to get attention. Where it's these proportions on this women. That's something I get a kick out of. There's a lot of controversy over how women are depicted in comics, and it's sometimes pretty sexist. I'll agree. I try to draw the women I draw to look within the realm of reasonable. But if you go to Instagram or you go to TikTok, I mean, there are women with outrageous, crazy figures that looks like they could be a 90s style comic book thing. So there's there's big women, there's small women, there's fit women, there's very sexy women, just like with men. And that's to critique how somebody draws a woman. It's if you don't like the way that artist is drawing that book, you don't need to post about it. Just don't buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I think it always makes me chuckle a little bit when people are well, we got this superhero team. They can travel through time. They can fly. They can shoot lava out of their hands. But we need to have a realistic female body shape here. And I mean, it's all fine, but it is you've decided to place that line in a very unique place.
Yeah, and I just think in this case, where society is, that's the way the pendulum is swinging.
Sure.
And what would be nice is eventually it'll swing somewhere in the middle, and all body types will be treated equal. Right now, it's the opposite way. If an artist like Frank Cho draws women too sexy, even his women though have their legs are thick and strong, and they're not idealized whatever the ideal is. But I mean, he's considered a little bit taboo, and he's a fantastic artist, and he's just drawing the way he wants to draw. Jeffrey, Scott Campbell, the same way. I mean, it's a very cool drawing style, but a lot of people, I don't know, it's hard to say with the internet. If it's a lot of people, it's just a lot of, usually the angriest or most frustrated people are the people typing the loudest. So I don't know. Those guys get the most cover gigs. So, those voices that we think are, determining the fates of these artists and these companies and what they publish and how they publish aren't necessarily in tune with, where the money is going necessarily.
No. Well, the 1% is louder than the 99 in a lot of cases.
Totally. It seems that way. But yeah, I mean,
for sure.
My advice to anyone is just let let the market kind of dictate, where things go. And honestly, if it's not, I don't think you should change your style to suit what's happening socially. It's, if you do, you're selling out in a sense. But obviously, you want to. No, it's not my place to say. I was going to say you want to be respectful to everybody, 100%. But I guess you don't have to be necessarily. But my art changed.
There's consequences to that.
I mean, there seem to be. Like my artwork, like I changed the way I draw women. I was from the 90s. It was a very specific style. I mean, you had the Marvel swimsuit, thing for God's sake. Granted, I was drawing Thor, but I never got to draw the sexy girls like everybody else.
Very sexy Thor, yes.
I did draw a very muscular, sexy Thor. There's a funny meme that's going around the internet about this one woman who wrote into Marvel, and they keep republishing it because she wanted Thor naked, and she didn't think I drew. I guess I didn't give him a large enough package, and she was a little upset. But that meme is floating around, and of course now it's come up because of the Thor movie where he's it's all his clothes blasted off, so she must be in heaven at this point.
Yeah.
It
cracks me up, by the way, the swimsuit issue. People will bring that up and you're like, man, Marvel would never do anything like that today. We need to get more of those out. Those Jim Lee's got the X-Women in there and their thongs and everything else. But you pick that up, you're like, you're also treated to the Punisher with like a skull, brief, and you've got a lot of dudes in there. It's not all just one direction.
I remember there was one in particular, and I'm a huge fan of John Romita Jr., but he drew Tony Stark by the pool in a Speedo. And I remember looking at it going, I don't think I needed to see this. I don't.
A lot of hair. But there's a lot of hair on Tony Stark.
Yeah, he's a very hairy Tony Stark. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. People have hair.
I knew that was exactly where you're going with that, by the way.
Even so recent comics, I mean, you look at the Hellfire Gal. Again, I'm not knocking any of this. It's fine. I'm saying it's all fine. Yet Emma Frost is in an outfit that's like cut in different ways, so it's like all like diamonds, but like most of her body is exposed. Like some like they're still doing stuff like that. But,
I guess that's where I was going with it. Like when I got married, my wife was like, "These women that you're drawing, they're kind of cardboard cutout women. They don't look like they actually exist." And like I was saying before, I go, you can actually find women that look like that pretty easily on social media. But once I started like kind of listening to her a little bit and trying to make the drawings look a little bit more real and giving somebody a different look or a different nose or a different face or something unique, more human, I guess. It made a difference, and at least as far as I can tell. Even Adam Hughes, the way his feminine ideal is a little bit. It's not, if you really analyze it the way I have, because I'm like studying how artists draw and portray and create shapes. It's not, it's a strong face for a woman. It's interesting, his approach. Now, obviously, he's probably the best modern comic book pinup artist there has been for decades.
Oh, yeah.
But his stuff isn't cookie cutouts of women. He has a very unique take on it.
Well, they can't all be like that. That one image of Rob Liefeld's Enchantress, where the legs are 10x body and head. So
with the long legs and
comic history.
My favorite is that Captain America.
Yes. He will defend that. He will still defend that to this day. It is.
He's. People talk about it. I remember Dale Keown said something once, which was interesting. He's like, you want someone to look at your artwork for more than 3 seconds, and with Rob, I think that was part of the thing. Like, if you can get someone to look at something for more than 3 seconds, you have their attention, and a cover like that with Captain America, you're gonna give it more than 3 seconds.
Yes.
It's that way with a lot of people work. Same thing with like Todd McFarlane and all the best artists.
Oh, yeah.
For all the heat Rob's taken, I think he's done okay financially. So
I don't think he cares.
I
really don't think he cares at all. He's still having fun. He's still having fun doing what he does. He still looks like he's 15 years old somehow, and
he's aging
older than I am.
No.
Well, and that's what it's about. Are you still having fun doing what you do?
Oh, I love it. I mean, I don't like the business side of it too much because there's a lot of, I wish I could just always do whatever I want to do. And it's getting closer and closer to that, where I can pitch a book to a company and they'll go, okay, well, we'll give you a shot on that. But, I'm not in a place where anything I pitch is going to turn into a comic book. But I really do love comics. I mean, it's all I think about, sadly. That and MMA. I love MMA, but everything is artwork. When I'm looking at anything, I'm thinking about it in terms of how the light is hitting that object, and I'm always trying to learn and get better.
Oh, brilliant!
I got a long way to go still, so it's kind of exciting in that way. Like like I was mentioning, you can see all these great artists on social media, and the moment you think you're doing something pretty good, you see another artist doing it light years ahead of what you're capable of. So it gives you another place to kind of aspire to.
Journey continues. If your son came to you and said, I figured it out, I'm going to be a comic artist, what do you say?
I'd say the same thing my dad told me. Don't do it. Yeah, it's a hard life. I mean, it's a lot of hours. It's not like a normal, 9 to 5 job. You come home and smoke a cigarette and have a drink. It's you're doing it. You wake up and you're doing it until you go to sleep, basically. I'll probably be up tonight until like midnight working, but I love it. And I've taken on a lot of projects, so I don't have much of a choice, but
Well, Dan, I wanted to thank you. You spent an hour with us. I am sensitive. You got to get back to drawing, but I did want to once again highlight. So you have, what is the name of the project that you have on Zoop?
Oh, it's just called the Urban Barbarian art book, I think. I don't know if we even have a title for it per se.
Well, we'll have the link. So
what?
We'll have the link here.
You'll have the link.
It's
something. Yeah. It involves my name. There's going to be 116 pages of artwork, so it should be pretty cool and a fair bit of nonsense.
You know what the price point is on it yet?
It's a hardcover book, so we have to figure out. Jordan they're all working on it at Zoop, so they'll kind of figure out a fair price. I don't think it's going to be outrageous, even with the paper shortages. I think it's still going to be reasonable.
His projects have all been easy. Winterman was priced really, really fairly for what you got.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Very nice. Well, look, I wish you a lot of success on your campaign, and hope we get to talk to you again.
Thanks. It was fun talking to you guys. I can tell you both really, know the business quite well and the history. It was kind of
in
fun.
very different ways. Yeah, we complete each other. It's that's gonna be.
It's like the Gungan and the Naboo. They form a symbiotic circle.
That's terrible. Yeah, no, it's love talking to people like yourself. Love talking to people who love comics. I mean, there's so much so much to be distracted by, and it's very easy to find things that keep you from loving comics. So it's nice to get back in there. So
yeah.
And sorry, when your drink and draw, when's the next one you're doing?
The next one will probably be the week after San Diego Comic-Con. We're gonna spotlight that book, the same one we've been talking about. Great. And maybe I'll have some new Canary news or something. We'll probably have some good San Diego Comic-Con, hopefully good stories, not bad ones.
Yeah, mostly there's more good. I have more good than bad San Diego's Comic-Con stories.
Yeah, well, you never know. Yeah, hopefully I don't come back with COVID or anything. So
that'd be good.
Well, okay, yeah, fingers crossed. Everybody in the world has it now at this point, it seems. So,
all right,
well, good luck there.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, you guys, and thank you
very much, Dan, and have a great night.
Cheers, you guys.
See you.